The room was hushed, the kind of silence that feels heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Keanu Reeves stepped into the exclusive dog breeder's facility, his presence immediately turning heads. He wasn't dressed in the flashy attire one might expect from a Hollywood star. Instead, he wore a simple leather jacket, jeans, and boots, his demeanor calm and unassuming. The dealer, a man in his late 50s, with a sharp suit and an even sharper tongue, watched him from across the room. He had seen countless celebrities walk through his doors, most of them more interested in flaunting their wealth than genuinely caring for the animals. He assumed Keanu was no different. Keanu moved slowly through the facility, his eyes scanning the rows of luxurious kennels. His gaze finally settled on a majestic Tibetan Mastiff, its fur thick and golden, its eyes wise and ancient. The dog exuded an aura of nobility, as if it carried the weight of centuries in its soul. Keanu approached the kennel, his expression softening. He knelt down, his fingers gently brushing against the bars. The Mastiff tilted its head, studying him with a quiet curiosity. The dealer approached, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. "That one's not for everyone," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "It's a $1.5 million dog. Rare breed. Not something you just buy on a whim." Keanu stood up, his eyes meeting the dealer's. There was no anger in his gaze, no defensiveness. Just a quiet intensity. "I'd like to know more about him," he said simply. The dealer smirked, crossing his arms. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but this isn't some pet store mutt. This is a Tibetan Mastiff. A symbol of status. A dog for kings. You'd have to be in a very particular financial bracket to even consider it." The room seemed to grow colder, the tension thickening. The other staff members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to react. Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice or try to prove himself. Instead, he took a step closer to the dealer, his expression calm but firm. "You think I can't afford this dog?" Keanu asked, his voice steady. The dealer hesitated, caught off guard by the lack of ego in Keanu's response. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "I'm just saying, this isn't the kind of purchase you make without serious consideration. It's not just about the money. It's about understanding the value of what you're buying." Keanu nodded slowly, as if considering the dealer's words. Then, without warning, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. The room seemed to freeze. The dealer's eyes widened, his confidence wavering for the first time. Keanu flipped open the checkbook, his pen poised over the paper. "You're right," Keanu said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. "It's not just about the money. It's about understanding value. But let me ask you something, do you?" The dealer blinked, his mouth opening but no words coming out. Keanu didn't wait for a response. He scribbled something on the check, tore it out, and held it out to the dealer. The room was so quiet you could hear the faint rustle of the paper as it passed between them. The dealer looked down at the check, his face pale. The amount written on it was not $1.5 million. It was far more. His hands trembled slightly as he stared at the numbers, his mind racing to process what was happening. Keanu's voice broke the silence, soft but firm. "I don't buy things to prove I can afford them. I buy them because they mean something to me. And this dog, he means something." The dealer looked up, his arrogance shattered. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Keanu turned back to the Mastiff, his expression softening once more. The dog let out a low, rumbling bark, as if acknowledging the man before him. The room remained silent, the weight of the moment settling over everyone present. The dealer, still clutching the check, felt a strange mix of shame and awe. He had underestimated Keanu Reeves, and in doing so, he had been humbled in a way he would never forget. And just like that, the story began, a story not just about a dog or a celebrity, but about humility, kindness, and the true meaning of value. The kind of story that leaves you wondering what you might have missed if you hadn't been paying attention. To understand why Keanu Reeves walked into that breeder's facility that day, you'd have to go back, way back. Keanu's love for animals wasn't something that had developed overnight. It was rooted in a lifetime of experiences, some joyful, others heartbreaking. Growing up, he hadn't had the easiest childhood. His family moved frequently, and stability was a luxury he rarely knew. But through all the chaos, there was one constant: the companionship of dogs. As a boy, Keanu had a mutt named Max. Max wasn't a fancy breed or a show dog. He was scrappy, with a patchy coat and a wagging tail that never seemed to stop. But to Keanu, Max was everything. The dog was his confidant, his playmate, his protector. When things got tough at home, Max was there, a silent but steadfast presence. Keanu often said that Max taught him more about loyalty and unconditional love than any person ever could. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. When Keanu was just a teenager, Max passed away. It was Keanu's first real experience with loss, and it left a deep mark on him. He carried that grief with him even as he grew older and found success in Hollywood. Fame and fortune didn't erase the pain, but they did give him the means to honor Max's memory in his own way. Over the years, Keanu quietly supported animal shelters and rescue organizations, often donating large sums of money without seeking recognition. His connection to Tibetan culture also played a significant role in shaping his love for animals, particularly dogs. Keanu had always been drawn to the spiritual teachings of Tibet, finding solace in its philosophies of compassion and mindfulness. During one of his visits to the region, he encountered Tibetan Mastiffs for the first time. These dogs weren't just pets, they were guardians, revered for their strength, loyalty, and deep connection to their heritage. Keanu was captivated. He saw in them a reflection of the values he held dear: strength, resilience, and an unwavering sense of purpose. But it wasn't just about the dogs themselves. It was about what they represented. To Keanu, owning a Tibetan Mastiff wasn't a status symbol. It was a way to honor a culture he deeply respected and to continue his lifelong journey of finding meaning in the companionship of animals. So, when he walked into that breeder's facility, it wasn't on a whim. It was the culmination of years of reflection, loss, and love. The dealer, of course, knew none of this. To him, Keanu was just another celebrity, someone who might buy a dog for the wrong reasons. But as he stood there, holding the check Keanu had handed him, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had misjudged the man before him. There was a depth to Keanu's quiet demeanor, a sense of purpose that went beyond the surface. Keanu, meanwhile, was already focused on the Mastiff. He knelt by the kennel again, his voice soft as he spoke to the dog. "You've been waiting for someone, haven't you?" he murmured. The Mastiff tilted its head, its dark eyes locking onto Keanu's. There was a connection there, something intangible, but undeniable. The dealer cleared his throat, breaking the moment. I didn't realize," he stammered, his earlier arrogance replaced by a hesitant respect. "If you'd like, I can tell you more about him. His lineage, his temperament." Keanu shook his head. "I don't need to know about his pedigree. I just need to know if he's ready to come home." The dealer blinked, unsure of how to respond. He had spent years selling dogs to the wealthy and powerful, but this was different. This wasn't a transaction. It was something deeper, something he couldn't quite put into words. As Keanu stood up, the Mastiff let out a low, rumbling bark, as if giving his approval. The sound echoed through the facility, a reminder that this story wasn't just about a man and a dog. It was about the bonds we form, the lessons we learn, and the ways we choose to honor the things that matter most. And so, the journey began, a journey that would challenge assumptions, change lives, and remind everyone involved that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the connections we make along the way. The dealer had always prided himself on being a good judge of character. In his line of work, you had to be. He dealt with the elite, billionaires, celebrities, and royalty, people who could afford to drop a fortune on a dog without batting an eye. Over the years, he had developed a sixth sense for spotting the genuine buyers from the window shoppers. Or so he thought. When Keanu Reeves walked into his facility, the dealer had immediately pegged him as the latter. Sure, Keanu was a famous actor, but he didn't carry himself like the other celebrities the dealer had encountered. There was no entourage, no flashy jewelry, no air of superiority. Just a quiet man in a leather jacket, his eyes scanning the room with genuine curiosity. The dealer had seen it all before, celebrities who wanted to appear humble, only to reveal their true colors when the price tag came into view. He assumed Keanu was no different. But as he stood there, clutching the check Keanu had handed him, the dealer felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: doubt. He looked down at the amount written on the check, his mind racing. It wasn't just the figure that stunned him, it was the ease with which Keanu had offered it. No haggling, no hesitation, just a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. The dealer's thoughts drifted back to his own life, to the choices that had led him here. He hadn't always been this cynical. Once, he had been a young man with a passion for animals, dreaming of breeding dogs that would bring joy to families. But somewhere along the way, that dream had gotten tangled up with ambition. He started catering to the ultra-wealthy, charging exorbitant prices for rare breeds. The money was good, but it came at a cost. He had become jaded, seeing people as walking wallets rather than individuals with stories of their own. And now, here was Keanu Reeves, challenging everything he thought he knew. The dealer glanced at the actor, who was still kneeling by the Mastiff's kennel, speaking softly to the dog. There was a gentleness in Keanu's demeanor, a sincerity that was impossible to fake. The dealer felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of the man he used to be before the cynicism took over. I should probably tell you more about the dog, the dealer said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. He comes from a long line of champions. His bloodline is impeccable. Keanu looked up, his expression calm but piercing. I don't care about his bloodline, he said. I care about who he is. Does he like long walks? Is he good with people? Does he have a favorite toy? The dealer blinked, caught off guard. In all his years of selling dogs, no one had ever asked questions like that. His clients were usually more interested in bragging rights than the dog's personality. He fumbled for a response, his confidence wavering. I'm not sure, he admitted. I mean, he's a great dog. Strong, loyal, everything you'd expect from a Tibetan Mastiff. But as for his favorite toy, he trailed off, realizing how little he actually knew about the animals he sold. Keanu nodded, as if he had expected this answer. Maybe you should spend some time with him, he suggested. Get to know him. Dogs have a way of teaching us things, if we're willing to listen. The words hit the dealer like a punch to the gut. He had spent years treating these dogs as commodities, as objects to be bought and sold. But Keanu's words reminded him of something he had long forgotten, that dogs were more than just status symbols. They were living, breathing beings with personalities and emotions. For the first time in years, the dealer felt a spark of something he thought he had lost: humility. He looked at the Mastiff, really looked at him, and saw not just a valuable asset, but a creature with a soul. The dog's eyes met his, and for a moment, it felt as if the animal could see right through him, past the arrogance and the greed, to the man he used to be. The dealer took a deep breath, his mind racing. He didn't know what to say or do next. All he knew was that this moment, this encounter with Keanu Reeves, had shaken him to his core. And as he stood there, grappling with his own thoughts, he realized that this wasn't just about selling a dog. It was about rediscovering something he had lost along the way. Keanu, meanwhile, seemed unfazed by the dealer's internal struggle. He stood up, his gaze returning to the Mastiff. I'll be back tomorrow, he said simply. I'd like to take him home, but only if he's ready. The dealer nodded, still processing everything that had happened. As Keanu turned to leave, the Mastiff let out a soft whine, as if saying goodbye. The sound lingered in the air, a reminder of the connection that had been forged in just a few short moments. And as the door closed behind Keanu, the dealer was left alone with his thoughts, wondering how he had gotten so far from the man he once was, and if it was too late to find his way back the next morning, the dealer arrived at the facility earlier than usual. He couldn't shake the events of the previous day from his mind. Keanu Reeves' words had lingered in his thoughts, echoing like a mantra, "Dogs have a way of teaching us things, if we're willing to listen." It was a simple statement, but it had struck a chord deep within him. As he walked through the facility, his eyes fell on the Tibetan Mastiff. The dog was lying in his kennel, his massive head resting on his paws. He looked regal, even in his stillness, but there was something else in his eyes, a quiet intelligence, a sense of patience. The dealer hesitated, then unlocked the kennel and stepped inside. The Mastiff lifted his head, watching the dealer with a calm, steady gaze. For a moment, the dealer just stood there, unsure of what to do. He had spent years around dogs, but he had always kept a professional distance. Now, he felt awkward, like a stranger in his own world. "Hey, boy," he said softly, crouching down. The Mastiff tilted his head, his ears perking up. The dealer reached out tentatively, letting the dog sniff his hand. When the Mastiff didn't pull away, he gently scratched behind the dog's ears. To his surprise, the Mastiff leaned into the touch, a low rumble of contentment escaping his throat. The dealer felt something shift inside him. It was a small moment, but it was significant. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about money or status or reputation. He was just present. As he sat there with the Mastiff, his mind wandered back to his conversation with Keanu. He had been so quick to judge, so sure of himself. But now, he wasn't so certain. Maybe he had been wrong, about Keanu, about the dogs, about himself. When Keanu returned later that day, the dealer was waiting for him. There was a different energy in the room, a sense of anticipation. The Mastiff, sensing Keanu's presence, stood up and wagged his tail, his excitement palpable. Keanu smiled, approaching the kennel. "Looks like someone's happy to see me," he said, his voice warm. The dealer nodded, his usual bravado replaced by a quiet humility. I spent some time with him this morning," he admitted. "You were right. He's not just a dog. He's special." Keanu looked at the dealer, his expression thoughtful. "They all are," he said. "If we take the time to see it." The dealer hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I misjudged you. I thought you were just another celebrity looking for a status symbol. But you're not. You see the value in things that can't be bought. And I respect that." Keanu nodded, his gaze steady. "Thank you," he said simply. "But this isn't about me. It's about him." He gestured to the Mastiff, who was now pressing his nose against the kennel bars, eager to be closer to Keanu. The dealer unlocked the kennel, and the Mastiff bounded out, his tail wagging furiously. Keanu knelt down, letting the dog sniff him and lick his face. The bond between them was undeniable, a connection that went beyond words. As the dealer watched, he felt a strange mix of emotions, regret, admiration, and something he couldn't quite name. He had spent years building a business, chasing success, but in that moment, he realized how much he had missed. The joy of a dog's wagging tail, the quiet companionship, the simple act of being present, these were the things that truly mattered. Keanu stood up, the Mastiff by his side. "I'd like to take him home," he said. "But I want to make sure it's the right decision, for him." The dealer nodded, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet sincerity. "I think it is," he said. "He's chosen you. And honestly, I can't think of anyone better." Keanu smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "That means a lot." As they finalized the paperwork, the dealer found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He had started with a love for animals, but somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of that. Now, thanks to Keanu, he was beginning to remember. When everything was settled, Keanu turned to the dealer, extending his hand. "Thank you," he said. "Not just for the dog, but for the reminder." The dealer shook his hand, a sense of gratitude washing over him. "No," he said. "Thank you." As Keanu and the Mastiff walked out of the facility, the dealer stood there, watching them go. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. And in that moment, he made a silent promise, to himself, to the dogs, and to the man who had reminded him of what truly mattered. The sun was setting as Keanu and the Mastiff left the breeder's facility, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. The dog trotted beside Keanu, his massive frame moving with a graceful ease. Keanu had named him Bodhi, a nod to the Sanskrit word for awakening. It felt fitting, given the journey they were both on. But this story wasn't just about Keanu and Bodhi. It was about something much bigger. A few days later, Keanu returned to the facility, this time with a small entourage. The dealer, who had been busy with a client, looked up in surprise. He hadn't expected to see Keanu again so soon. "Mr. Reeves," the dealer said, his tone respectful, but curious. "What brings you back?" Keanu smiled, his calm demeanor as steady as ever. "I wanted to talk to you about something," he said. "Something important." The dealer gestured to his office, and the two men sat down, Bodhi lying at Keanu's feet. The dog's presence was calming, a silent reminder of the bond that had brought them all together. "I've been thinking," Keanu began, "about what you said the other day. About how Bodhi is special. And you're right, he is. But he's not just special to me. He's special to a lot of people." The dealer frowned, unsure of where this was going. "I'm not sure I follow," he admitted. Keanu leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I'm not keeping Bodhi for myself," he said. "I'm donating him to a sanctuary, a place that supports Tibetan culture and protects endangered breeds like the Mastiff. It's a cause I've been passionate about for years, and I think Bodhi can do a lot of good there." The dealer blinked, stunned. He had expected many things, but this wasn't one of them. "You're donating him?" he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "But you paid so much for him. Why would you just give him away?" Keanu's smile softened. "Because it's not about the money," he said. "It's about making a difference. Bodhi deserves to be more than just a pet. He deserves to be a symbol of resilience, of heritage, of hope. And this sanctuary can give him that." The dealer sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He had spent years selling dogs to the wealthy, people who saw them as status symbols or accessories. But Keanu was different. He saw the bigger picture, the potential for something greater. I don't know what to say," the dealer admitted. "This is incredible." Keanu nodded. "I thought you might want to be a part of it," he said. "The sanctuary could use someone with your expertise. Someone who understands these dogs and cares about their future." The dealer's eyes widened. "You want me to be involved?" "Yes," Keanu said simply. "You have a gift. And I think it's time you used it for something meaningful." For a long moment, the dealer was silent. He thought about his life, about the choices he had made and the person he had become. He thought about Bodhi, about the way the dog had looked at him that morning in the kennel, as if seeing straight into his soul. And then, slowly, he nodded. "I'd be honored," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see myself." Keanu smiled, a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "We all have the capacity for change," he said. "Sometimes, we just need a little nudge." As they shook hands, Bodhi let out a soft woof, as if giving his approval. The sound broke the tension, and both men laughed, the weight of the moment lifting. But the story didn't end there. In fact, it was just beginning. The dealer sat in his office long after Keanu and Bodhi had left, his mind swirling with thoughts. He had always prided himself on being a shrewd businessman, someone who knew how to navigate the world of high-end dog breeding with precision and skill. But now, for the first time in years, he felt uncertain. Keanu's words had struck a chord deep within him. We all have the capacity for change. Sometimes, we just need a little nudge. The dealer couldn't stop thinking about it. He had spent so much of his life chasing success, building a reputation, and amassing wealth. But in doing so, he had lost sight of why he had started in the first place. He thought back to his early days, when he had been a young man with a passion for animals. He had dreamed of breeding dogs that would bring joy to families, of creating a legacy that went beyond money. But somewhere along the way, that dream had gotten buried under the weight of ambition and greed. Now, thanks to Keanu, he was beginning to remember. The next morning, the dealer arrived at the facility with a renewed sense of purpose. He walked through the rows of kennels, taking the time to stop and interact with each dog. He noticed things he had overlooked before, the way one dog's tail wagged excitedly when he approached, the way another nuzzled his hand, seeking affection. These small moments, once insignificant to him, now felt profound. He spent extra time with the Tibetan Mastiffs, the breed that had started it all. He watched them closely, noting their unique personalities and quirks. One Mastiff, a young female with a sleek black coat, reminded him of Bodhi. She had the same quiet intelligence, the same regal presence. The dealer felt a pang of guilt as he realized how little he had truly known about these magnificent animals. Later that day, he called Keanu. "I've been thinking," the dealer said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "About what you said. About making a difference. And I want to help. However I can." Keanu's response was immediate and warm. "That's great to hear," he said. "The sanctuary could use someone with your expertise. And I think it could be good for you, too." The dealer nodded, even though Keanu couldn't see him. "I think you're right," he said. "I've spent so much of my life focused on the wrong things. It's time for a change." Over the next few weeks, the dealer threw himself into the sanctuary project. He worked closely with Keanu and the sanctuary's team, offering his knowledge and resources to help create a space where Tibetan Mastiffs and other endangered breeds could thrive. He visited the sanctuary site, a sprawling piece of land nestled in the mountains, and felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. But the real turning point came when he met the people who would benefit from the sanctuary. He spoke with Tibetan families who shared stories of their cultural connection to the Mastiffs, of how these dogs were more than just animals, they were guardians, companions, and symbols of their heritage. He listened to conservationists who spoke passionately about protecting endangered breeds and preserving their legacy for future generations. Each conversation, each story, deepened the dealer's understanding of what this sanctuary could mean. It wasn't just about the dogs. It was about people, about culture, about the bonds that connected them all. One evening, as he stood on the sanctuary grounds, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the dealer felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in decades. He realized that this was what he had been missing, a sense of purpose, of contributing to something greater than himself. Keanu joined him, standing quietly by his side. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Keanu broke the silence. "You've done a good thing here," he said. "Not just for the dogs, but for yourself." The dealer nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "Thank you," he said. "For giving me the chance to be a part of this. For reminding me of who I used to be." Keanu smiled, his gaze steady. "We all have the capacity for change," he said again. "Sometimes, we just need a little nudge." As the two men stood there, watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple, the dealer felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face it. And in that moment, he made a silent promise, to himself, to the dogs, and to the man who had reminded him of what truly mattered. The sanctuary was coming together beautifully. The sprawling piece of land in the mountains had been transformed into a haven for Tibetan Mastiffs and other endangered breeds. There were spacious enclosures, lush green fields, and even a small clinic to ensure the dogs received the best care. The dealer had thrown himself into the project, working tirelessly to make sure every detail was perfect. But there was one thing that still weighed on his mind. One evening, as he and Keanu reviewed the final plans for the sanctuary's grand opening, the dealer hesitated. He had been thinking about this for weeks, but he wasn't sure how to bring it up. Finally, he took a deep breath and spoke. "There's something I need to do," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Something I should have done a long time ago." Keanu looked at him, his expression calm but curious. "What is it?" The dealer reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. It was the same check Keanu had given him weeks ago, the one for far more than the $1.5 million price of Bodhi. He held it out to Keanu, his hand trembling slightly. "I can't accept this," he said. "Not after everything you've done. Not after everything you've shown me." Keanu frowned, his brow furrowing. "That money was for Bodhi," he said. "For the sanctuary. It's not about me." The dealer shook his head. "I know," he said. "But I don't deserve it. Not after the way I treated you. Not after the way I've treated these dogs for years. I've been so focused on money, on status, that I lost sight of what really matters. And you reminded me of that." Keanu was silent for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. Then he took the check and tore it in half. The dealer's eyes widened in shock. "What are you doing?" he asked. Keanu smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "The money was never the point," he said. "It was about making a difference. And you've already done that. You've changed. That's worth more than any amount of money." The dealer felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent so much of his life chasing wealth, believing it was the key to happiness. But now, standing here with Keanu, he realized how wrong he had been. I don't know what to say," he admitted. Keanu clapped him on the shoulder, his touch firm but reassuring. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just keep doing what you're doing. That's enough." The dealer nodded, a sense of gratitude washing over him. He had spent years building walls around himself, protecting his heart from the pain of vulnerability. But now, thanks to Keanu, those walls were beginning to crumble. As they stood there, the sound of barking filled the air. The dogs had gathered near the fence, their tails wagging excitedly. Bodhi was among them, his massive frame standing out even among the other mastiffs. He let out a low, rumbling bark, as if calling them over. Keanu and the dealer walked to the fence, the dogs pressing against the bars to greet them. Bodhi nuzzled Keanu's hand, his eyes filled with affection. The dealer reached out, letting the dog sniff his hand before gently scratching behind his ears. "He's happy here," the dealer said, his voice soft. Keanu nodded. "He is," he said. "And so are the others. Thanks to you." The dealer felt a surge of emotion, a mix of pride and humility. He had spent so much of his life chasing success, but now, for the first time, he felt like he had truly achieved something meaningful. As the sun set over the sanctuary, casting a golden glow over the fields, the dealer made a silent promise, to himself, to the dogs, and to the man who had reminded him of what truly mattered. The grand opening of the sanctuary was a day the dealer would never forget. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the sprawling fields and enclosures. People had come from far and wide, dog lovers, conservationists, members of the Tibetan community, and even a few curious onlookers. The air was filled with excitement and anticipation, a sense of hope that was almost palpable. The dealer stood at the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. He had never been one for public events, preferring to stay behind the scenes, but today felt different. Today, he was proud of what he had helped create. Keanu arrived shortly after, Bodhi trotting by his side. The mastiff looked majestic, his golden coat gleaming in the sunlight. He seemed to sense the importance of the day, his demeanor calm but regal. As the ceremony began, Keanu stepped up to the podium, the crowd falling silent. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his voice steady and warm. "This sanctuary isn't just a place for dogs. It's a place for people, for culture, for connection. It's a reminder of the bonds we share, with each other, with animals, and with the world around us." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. I want to thank someone who made this possible, he continued. Someone who had the courage to change, to see the value in something greater than himself. Without him, this sanctuary wouldn't exist. The dealer felt a lump form in his throat as Keanu gestured to him. The crowd erupted into applause, and for a moment, he was too stunned to move. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, joining Keanu at the podium. I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice trembling. This has been a journey for me. A journey of rediscovery. And I owe it all to Keanu, to Bodhi, and to all of you. The crowd cheered, their support overwhelming. The dealer felt a surge of emotion, a mix of gratitude and humility. He had spent so much of his life chasing success, but now, for the first time, he felt like he had truly achieved something meaningful. As the ceremony continued, the dealer found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the day Keanu had walked into his facility, about the way the actor's quiet humility had challenged everything he thought he knew. He thought about Bodhi, about the bond he had formed with the dog and the lessons he had learned. And he thought about the people, the families, the conservationists, the volunteers, who had come together to make this sanctuary a reality. It was a reminder that no one achieves anything alone, that we are all connected in ways we may not even realize. As the day drew to a close, the dealer found himself standing by the fence, watching the dogs play in the fields. Bodhi was among them, his massive frame moving with a graceful ease. The dealer felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing he had made a difference. Keanu joined him, standing quietly by his side. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Keanu broke the silence. You've done a good thing here, he said. Not just for the dogs, but for yourself. The dealer nodded, a lump forming in his throat. Thank you, he said. For giving me the chance to be a part of this. For reminding me of who I used to be. Keanu smiled, his gaze steady. We all have the capacity for change, he said again. Sometimes, we just need a little nudge. As the two men stood there, watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple, the dealer felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face it. And in that moment, he made a silent promise, to himself, to the dogs, and to the man who had reminded him of what truly mattered. The sanctuary had become more than just a haven for dogs. It had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of change. Over the months that followed its grand opening, it flourished, drawing visitors from all over the world. Families came to learn about the Tibetan Mastiffs and their cultural significance. Conservationists came to study the endangered breeds and work on preservation efforts. And dog lovers came simply to bask in the joy of being surrounded by these magnificent animals. For the dealer, the sanctuary became a second home. He spent most of his days there, working alongside the staff and volunteers. He had traded his expensive suits for simple, practical clothes, and his once polished shoes were now often caked with mud. But he had never been happier. One crisp autumn morning, the dealer stood by the fence, watching Bodhi play in the fields. The Mastiff had become a favorite among visitors, his gentle nature and regal presence captivating everyone who met him. The dealer smiled as he watched the dog chase a ball, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. Keanu arrived a short while later, as he often did. He had become a regular presence at the sanctuary, his quiet humility and genuine love for the dogs inspiring everyone around him. He joined the dealer by the fence, the two men standing in comfortable silence as they watched Bodhi. He's come a long way, Keanu said after a while, his voice soft. The dealer nodded. We all have, he replied. Keanu glanced at him, a small smile playing on his lips. You've done a good thing here, he said. Not just for the dogs, but for yourself. The dealer felt a surge of emotion, a mix of gratitude and humility. I couldn't have done it without you, he admitted. You showed me what really matters. You gave me a second chance. Keanu shook his head. I didn't give you anything, he said. You made the choice to change. That's all on you. The dealer was silent for a moment, letting the words sink in. He thought about the journey he had been on, about the man he used to be, and the man he had become. He thought about the lessons he had learned, about humility, kindness, and the true meaning of wealth. I used to think success was about money, he said finally. About status, about power. But now I know it's about something much bigger. It's about the impact we have on others. It's about the legacy we leave behind. Keanu nodded, his gaze steady. That's the real measure of a life, he said. Not what we take, but what we give. The two men stood there for a while longer, watching the dogs play in the fields. The sun was warm on their faces, the air filled with the sounds of barking and laughter. It was a moment of peace, of connection, of quiet reflection. As the day drew to a close, the dealer felt a sense of closure. He knew his journey wasn't over, there was still so much to do, so much to learn. But for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace with who he was and where he was going. Keanu clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie and respect. You've done good, he said. Keep going. The dealer nodded, a lump forming in his throat. Thank you, he said. For everything. As Keanu walked away, Bodhi trotted over to the dealer, his tail wagging. The Mastiff nuzzled his hand, his eyes filled with affection. The dealer knelt down, scratching behind the dog's ears. You've done good, too, he said softly. Bodhi let out a low, rumbling bark, as if in agreement. The dealer smiled, a sense of gratitude washing over him. And as he stood there, surrounded by the dogs and the people he had come to care for, he realized something important. True wealth wasn't measured in dollars or status. It was measured in the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the legacy we leave behind. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life.